Helicon West, our planning committee, and our student helpers like Wes, who will be recording this event tonight. We do have open mic, and the sign-up sheet is in the back, so if you'd like to sign up for open mic, go ahead and do so. And if you do not want to be recorded, just tell Wes and he'll turn off the camera. Thank you especially to Utah Humanities Council, the Utah Humanities Book Festival, and the person who organizes this event is actually here selling books because he does everything. And this is Michael McLean.
Yeah, Michael!
And if you don't understand the scope of the book festival, it is actually an entire newspaper here with all of the events that go over the entire state of Utah, and starting from pretty much now, this end week of September, all through October, and maybe even into November. I'm not sure.
No,
not into November. He can't do that.
I'm too tired.
And so these programs are available in the back for free that you can take one of events all over the state of Utah. Okay, and so this is awesome, and thank you so much to Michael for coming up here to be a part of this, because I know that you are spread very thin and are everywhere. So this is the 21st Annual Utah Humanities Book Festival. This annual free festival is Utah Humanities' gift to the community, allowing us to explore all sorts of ideas by interacting with great writers. The complete program is available online at utahhumanities.org, or again, you can pick up the program. After the event, after Tessa reads tonight, then she'll be available for Q&A. Okay. Our thanks to the Book Festival's major sponsors, the George S. and Dolores Dorr Eccles Foundation, the R. Harold Burton Foundation, the Salt Lake City Arts Council, Salt Lake County Zoo, Arts and Parks Fund, National Endowment for the Arts, and the National Endowment for the Humanities. As part of the ongoing funding, if we have some surveys, we have a limited number, but we would hope that some of you who have enjoyed this event tonight and have found it important would fill out a survey from STAR so that we can continue to fund this really, really important event in our state. Okay. So again, sign up for the open mic. The sign-up sheet is back there on the table by Michael. He'll be selling books. You can buy those during open mic or after the entire event. So it is now my pleasure to introduce our featured speaker for tonight, and that is Tessa Fontaine. She's the author of The Electric Woman, for sale in the back, a memoir and death-defying acts. And it is a New York Times editor's pick, a Barnes & Noble Discover Great New Writers pick, an Amazon Editor's Best of the Month featured debut, and Amazon Best Books of 2018 so far. Our other writing can be found in Glamour, The Believer, LitHub, and elsewhere. She founded a Salt Lake City Writers in the Schools program and is a doctoral student at the University of Utah. Hailing from outside San Francisco, Tessa currently lives in South Carolina, where she's working on a novel. So help me welcome and thank Tessa.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Shannon thanked a lot of the people that I was going to thank, so I won't go through the list again, but I'm just so happy to be here and to meet all of you and to get to see Logan, which I haven't been to before, and it's really beautiful. So thank you so much, and Michael and the Book Festival. It's really, really an honor to be here, and I will come back to Utah any chance I can get, so very happy to be here. I'm going to read a couple sections from my book right now. Can you all hear me okay, first of all? Yeah, okay, great. I'm going to read a few sections from my book, and before I do that, I'm just going to say quickly a little bit what it's about. I spent a season as a performer with America's Last Traveling Sideshow. So there's only one sideshow that still travels in the United States. They have sword swallowers and knife throwers and fire eaters and all of those things. I couldn't do any of those things, but I still became a performer with them, and I'll read a little bit from the beginning of the book that explains kind of how that happened. So that's one of the storylines, and then the other storyline is about my mom and my family, and I'll read a little bit about that too. And one of the things that I think is so amazing about the sideshow is it's a place where every person was accepted. And I don't think that we have a lot of places like that. but it's a place where folks who weren't accepted in their home communities because of whatever difference they had growing up, or if people had kind of mental illnesses that weren't really kind of working for them in their lives, or had criminal records that prohibited them from getting other jobs, or had substance abuse problems that had not, enabled them to kind of work a regular 9-to-5. Everyone found a home together, working in the sideshow and working in the carnival. So among all of the things that were really amazing and bizarre about this experience, that's one thing that I think about and try to remember when I think about whether there's a possibility for all people to sort of be together in a way that makes sense. And it turns out being a carny is a place where you can all be together. So good takeaway. Okay, so I'm going to read the prologue and then 2 just really short pieces of other sections that come after that. So the prologue is called "The Trick Is There Is No Trick." We start by lighting ourselves on fire. Parts that are easier to put out than our faces. Hands to begin. Arms outstretched, palms toward the darkening sky. I watch as a flaming torch is wiped across my hand from wrist to fingertips. For 1, maybe 2 seconds, I'm on fire. The flame trail is 2 inches high. My hand warms. It doesn't burn exactly, but it feels like touching black leather after it's baked in the sun, a heat I impulsively want to move away from. I close my fist around the flame and put myself out. "What sorts of acts can you do?" the sideshow manager, Tommy, asked. Before I wrote back, I Googled acts in a sideshow. I culled a list of what I saw on Wikipedia's sideshow page. Juggling, fire swallowing, poi spinning, magic. I started feeling more brazen. What couldn't I learn in a couple of months? Bed of nails, snake charming, I wrote, and then all animal charming. I'm good with animals. Terrific, Tommy wrote back. See you in 2 months. I decided to learn one of the many acts I'd claimed to know, so now I'm in an Introduction to Fire Eating class at a fire arts collective in Oakland, California, because of course these things exist in the Bay Area. The evening outside the fence doesn't notice me. Buses sigh, a kid across the street accuses another of a basketball foul, old women roll their groceries behind them. I smell slow-cooking meat and exhaust, but this isn't a time to pause, close my eyes, and try to remember all these sounds and smells. I do anyway. I'd hoped some magic was involved in learning to eat fire. Something that meant you didn't really have to do the thing it appeared you were doing. Maybe you spread a flame retardant solution in your mouth, like on hotel curtains. Perhaps there was a little machine you wore behind your ear that shot fire-squelching foam onto the flame as it approached your face. Or maybe it was an illusion. But the class is a total disappointment. There is no trick. You eat fire by eating fire. On the first day, Shayna, our teacher, all smiles, says, "Look at my severe burns." She rolls up her sleeves and points with delight to a series of scars on her arms, like she's identifying constellations for a child. The class is in a massive warehouse full of fire artists. We trudge past the welders and blacksmiths and ceramicists into an outside yard full of huge gas canisters and "No smoking, dangerous, flammable" signs. We light our torches. I try not to think about the waiver I signed detailing possible death and dismemberment. The first lesson, how to put yourself out. There's only one other student in the class, a video game designer with small gauges in his ears. I ask him why he's in the fire swallowing class, and he tells me that he feels too ordinary at Burning Man as a stilt walker. He wants something special. Shayna hands me a thick, damp kitchen towel, picks up a can of white gas, the kind you use to refill lanterns on a camping trip, the kind I was never allowed to touch as a kid, and shakes some down both legs of her jeans. There's too much. Whole, fat droplets land on the fabric and soak right in. Hundreds of them, a rainstorm from a metal canister never meant for such an offhanded joggle. She flicks a lighter and ignites herself. Her legs, from mid-thigh down to ankle, are on fire. She's looking at me, smiling. I dive toward her legs with the wet towel outstretched between my hands as she's saying with firm encouragement, smother, smother, smother. I'm sure my hands will go up in flames the moment they near the fire. I pat the towel against her legs, up and down, and though I feel a little bit of warmth on my hands, they do not melt or blister. As I bring the towel away, I realize I have, indeed, put Shayna out. Nice, Shayna says, and I feel a greater sense of success than I have about anything in a long time. But that was way too gentle. If I'd really been cooking, I'd be singed by now. You'll understand the kind of force that's needed once you have to put yourself out. It's hard not to picture self-immolation, a body barely an outline inside a small cosmos of flame. We practice again, this time with Stiltwalker and me really smacking Shayna's legs with force. We're winded and flushed and ready for a break, but it's time for us to get lit on fire. Shayna tells us to reach out our hands, palms up, like bad school children in old movies readied for the switch. My heart is starting to pump fast. I haven't felt any fear about running away with the sideshow until this moment, but Shayna is approaching my skin with fire. It's excuses for leaving build in my throat, and though every instinct in my body encourages me to bail, I don't withdraw my palm. It's shaking. My upper lip is coated in sweat. See yourself on fire, Shayna says. Let the flame dance. She wipes the torch across my skin. My palm is alight. I immediately close my fist and kill the flame. She hands me the torch. I hold it in my right hand and dab it to my left palm, but it doesn't catch. Longer, firmer, she says. I try again. I'm okay getting the fire to my hand, but keeping it there, pressing it into the flesh, that's the hard part. It's also what distinguishes fire performers from children who run their fingers through candle flames. But watching fire rise from your own skin is distressing. And why shouldn't it be? Evolution has trained us to flee from fire threatening our bodies. We move on quickly. The next step is to wipe the flame along the top of the arm. Do not wipe along the underside of the arm, she says, she tells us, rubbing the blue-veined underbelly of her scar-crossed arm. Stiltwalker is short and very hairy. The moment he wipes the fire against his arm with a jerky, nervous spasm, a wide swath of hairs instantly coils and blackens and then disintegrates. My hair, he yells. It's burning. Yes, Shayna says calmly. It is. He is wide-eyed and trying his hardest to fake a smile. I look down at my blonde arm hair and imagine it growing back into thick black tendrils like poison fairy tale vines. I take a deep breath and wipe the torch across the top of my arm. Heat spreads as all the hairs take flame and are quickly singed. Let it burn, Shayna yells as I suffocate the flame too quickly. I wipe my hand across my arm, smooth as a baby's. In Turkey, Shayna tells us, a barber singes his customer's face after he shaves it for ultimate smoothness. They find it relaxing. I touch my arm again. I would not say that this is relaxing. But there is something satisfying about how quickly we're building intimacy with an element most people fear. With an element that just 20 minutes before I'd been scared of. But here I am, letting it rise on me. Next, it's time for the tongue. Because he is a human with naturally developed survival instincts, Stiltwalker does not get the flame all the way to his tongue the first several tries. His tongue is stuck as far out from his body as it can go. I can see the muscles at the base of it quivering with effort. His neck is taut and the thin tendons protrude with strain. He turns the torch toward his mouth and lowers the flame. It's a foot away, 6 inches forward, then moves swiftly away from his face with a flame trail like a comet. He laughs nervously, shakes out his neck, and resumes his pose, head tilted slightly back, tongue out, a lizard mid-catch. He begins lowering the flame toward his tongue again, and somehow he's trying to back his body away from the flame at the same time he's bringing the fire closer to his face. Again, it's 5 inches, 3, 1 inch away, and a retreat. It's not surprising. Shayna tells us nobody puts the fire right into her mouth, right onto her tongue. There are too many years of learned behavior in the way. At the end of his turn, Stiltwalker has attempted 5 or 6 times and brought the flame very close. I'm impressed, though my stomach clenches a little each time, worried for his face. Your turn, Shayna says. I dip the torch in fuel and shake it out, and Shayna lights it. I'm sure I won't get it all the way in. She's demonstrated the movements a few times, and I replicate what she's done. I widen my legs into a triangle, arch my spine, tilt my head back 90 degrees, bring the torch up above my face a foot or so, and with a dramatic turn of the wrist, beeline it straight to my mouth. I touch the torch to my tongue for 1 second and then pull it back out toward the sky. Jesus Christ, Shayna says. My mouth tastes like camping. My lips tingle. You just lit your tongue on fire, she says. And this is the only time I can imagine that being a congratulatory exclamation. I bring the still lit torch back above my head, angle my wrist, and bring it down straight into my mouth again. Wow, Shayna says, laughing. You don't have many instincts for self-preservation. I consider telling her the whole story and then think better of it. The back of my teeth feel a little sooty on my tongue. Oxygen feeds fire. If you succumb to impulse and attempt to blow out the flame as it nears your lips, you've forgotten about chemistry. An hour later, when I learned to swallow 2 torches at once, my desperate attempt to blow out the fire does not, in fact, succeed in extinguishing the flame, but instead collects more oxygen that grows the torches into a huge fireball that engulfs my hands. It hurts. It burns. Shayna describes the most common types of burns, the kinds you get no matter what, no matter how careful you are in this line of work, as bad sunburns. I am now in a tradition of performers and mystics and childhood pyromaniacs. I will honor them by burning myself as infrequently as possible. As soon as the class is over, I can tell my mouth is burnt. Shayna says this is normal. Patches of my face and arms are reddish and tender, and there's cracked skin, almost like little dried out blisters on the corners of my mouth. I have a blind date after my class. I avoid remembering this while I'm in the fire eating class, but I used to be a chicken. My childhood memories are haunted by feeling too scared to do anything, from taking out the garbage at night to striking a match for incense. I watched all the other kids act brazen and bold as I stood at 8 years old, 12, 17, upset with how much I did not want to be the person that I was becoming. Later, I told people that I willed myself to stop being a fraidy cat, but I think, as these things go, we develop personality traits when we need them. For my whole life, I've been scared, terrified of losing my mom. I am losing my mom. While I'm standing among explosive containers on a quiet Oakland night, she's humming at a nurse in one of her daily therapy sessions because she no longer has language. While I'm running a flame along my palm, she is running her hand across a half of her body that can no longer move. She touches it a lot, the paralyzed side. Perhaps it doesn't feel like it belongs to her. She touches everything around her. Kitchen table, fork, husband, we say, as she touches those things, to let her know that they still belong to her too. Wound, we say, as she touches her head, where it was opened after her brain would not stop bleeding. She's a yes person, a woman of adventure. When I begin to doubt that I can pull this off, I stop and think of her. The only way to do it is to do it. There's no trick. So I'm going to read 2 other just really short little sections. And this one comes just a couple pages later, and it's a jump back in time to when my mom was young, and it's me imagining her based on some stories she had told me. The water is clear and the sand is warm, and every morning, before going to work at the travel agency, she slices into an orange-pink papaya. She eats half for breakfast, spooning out the flesh in big hunks, wiping her chin with the back of her hand because there's almost too much juice, too much perfume, because it spills over no matter how careful she is. But she is not going to work. She's 19 and about to climb onto a surfer's shoulders out in the turquoise waters of a Hawaiian beach. Her name's Teresa. There's a crowd gathering on the sand. She steps into the ocean beside the surfer, paying no attention to the small, sharp shells beneath her feet. Out into the water then, deeper until it's time to paddle. They climb onto the board belly first, she below, the surfer on top of her, 2 sets of arms paddling in tandem. They must move with one another like oars along a canoe, over the break, farther out to the point where the waves begin swelling enough to catch. They are so far out, and then a little further, and a little further still. They turn their board toward the shore. She can feel her heart hammering against the wood. Waves pass beneath them, lifting the back and then the front in a gentle roll. Mornings when they practice, gulls swoop nearby. Small, clear fish move in clouds. A pincushion sea star winks and waves. A big swell nears. Teresa looks over her shoulder a few times, checking to see how quickly the wave approaches, how it's rising. The audience holds their hands above their eyes to block the glare. They are ready to be amazed. The wave catches hold of the board with a little tug, and they begin to fly. She presses herself up, stands quickly, and the surfer behind her does as well. He grips her by the waist. She springs up, and he lifts her, one fluid motion, her body rising from the board and into the air, her feet at his knees, and then she's nearly to the sky, touching the sun, her head and shoulders bent back as he lifts her waist above his head and then plants her on his shoulders. Her legs bent around his chest, she lifts her arms in the air, sitting high above the water. She smiles and waves for the audience. They cannot hear the blood roiling in her temples, the nerves. They cannot feel her hammering heart. She performs fearlessness. The board is unsteady atop the water, and the surfer's legs shake with the effort of balance, and she quivers as she flexes her muscles to stay upright. She must stay upright, and still she keeps one arm up, up, up toward the sky, that kind of queen, pointing at the sun, that high. All right, and one last little section. This is about 50 pages into the book, so by now we're on our sideshow journey a little bit and learning a little bit more about all the performers and also a little bit more about my family. So I'm just going to read one other section that has to do with my mom. So the beginning of this chapter is called The Dragon, 1 month after the stroke, November 2010. It was Thanksgiving. I made lists. We were crammed into a neighbor's kitchen. They were away for the weekend. My mom was still in the intensive care unit, infections having crawled into her brain and her blood. She couldn't eat or drink anything because her brain had forgotten how to chew and swallow. We spent most of our time at the hospital. Every day was the last day, the big goodbye, and then there was a new last day, again and again. So Thanksgiving. Some aunts and uncles had driven up, and we all stood shoulder to shoulder in the neighbor's kitchen, being good old regular Americans. Cranberries, fresh and canned. I wrote down recipe temperatures and cooking times. I wrote celery, butter, russet potatoes, flour. There was some communal delusion that Thanksgiving would heal us a little. We were big into holidays. The whole extended family loved elaborate meals, decorations, my mom especially. But we'd forgotten that she was the one always in the middle, making it all come together. In preparation for Christmas 10 years earlier, my mom came home with a thin cardboard box covered in Chinese characters. Without saying a word, she pulled out a red and orange flattened shape from inside. "Hold this very gently," she whispered to my brother on the couch. He was 11, I was 15. She placed one end of the paper in his hands, took the other, and walked slowly backward, letting it unfold between them. One red-orange plane of paper turned into 2, then 3, then more, strings attaching each section as she walked backward across the living room. When it seemed like all the sections had unfolded, she backed away even further, and the paper kept growing. It kept getting bigger than we imagined it could. "I've decided on a theme for Christmas this year," she said. The paper kept unspooling, on and on like scarves pulled from a magician's throat. "The theme is Chinese." She was standing against the far wall, 20 feet away. Stretching across the room was a paper dragon. It had gone from the world of 2 dimensions into 3. It was our year to host Christmas for our extended family. The theme is Chinese, we asked. What does that even mean? You'll see, she said, with a grin like applauding cartoon characters. For Christmas, we asked, still incredulous. She sighed. I'm tired of turkeys and hams, aren't you? We nodded, but we were not tired of turkeys or hams. In my 15 years, we'd never had turkeys or hams. We didn't eat traditional holiday foods because they were always boring, according to my mom. We knew about them only as the tropes of other people's worlds from the occasional mainstream movie we were allowed to watch. She set the dragon down and pulled from other boxes little firecrackers and paper lanterns and big plastic soup spoons. Do you kids know what's no fun, she asked. We shook our heads. Everything ordinary. Over the next few weeks, she and my stepdad were up on ladders every evening. Room by room, they transformed our small house into one of those shops you see in Chinatown, so crammed full of goods it was hard to make out one object from the next. There were bright lanterns painted with pink pictures of bamboo and butterflies and flowers that hung from our lights, and paper umbrellas dangling upside down, and the counter was stacked with fake jade cats and red satin. She filled the fridge with wonton wrappers, tiny mushrooms, and big bundles of greens. On Christmas, when the 8 family members came, they were in equal parts delighted and wary. This fun, wild sister, this creative one, this girl always a few steps away from what they understood. The dragon hung by translucent fishing line from hooks in the ceiling above our dinner table, a floating centerpiece. This year, my mom said as we sat down, beginning a Christmas toast, we will all be transported somewhere far, far away. Her tone was deeply solemn. There was always somewhere else to be, some great dream adventure awaiting, this time in misty mountains dotted with jade lions. She was always a little bit elsewhere. Maybe that helped her when one of the doctors stood with his face 6 inches from hers, as if she were deaf and dumb, asking her to stick out her tongue. Maybe she didn't respond to his command because it was stupid. It was ordinary. And she was distracted by more interesting concerns. Maybe she was inside some deep fold in her brain designing a new landscape for her dragons. Stop there. Question, Nancy? Yeah, okay, great. Well, first of all, I want to say how excited I am there is an open mic after this and that I can hear some of your words. That is so thrilling to have that paired with. I'm tired of hearing myself talk, so I'm anyway much more excited to hear some of you talk. But I would love to answer any questions that you might have, or hear any good jokes that you know, or anything. Anyone have any questions? Yes.
I'm delighted by the humor in this. So I wasn't knowing what to expect because I haven't read it yet, and it's going to be it's such a nice surprise so far. But to turn this burning of flesh into these funny little asides, I don't know how you do that. That's pretty awesome.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
And I want to know more about how in the world you can weave such a heavy topic of this stroke in with this heavy topic of these highly dangerous acts that people are learning to perform. And there you are in the middle of it, and everything just seems so natural. Like, here I am, this is what I do. I burn the flesh on my arm, and my mother's had this stroke. It's pretty phenomenal. I guess I don't have a question.
Thank you. Just to say something quickly about this idea of heaviness and lightness, though, which I think you're getting at. Yeah, it's something that I think about a lot because when we read, I think heavy things hit harder when we have some buoyancy beforehand. And so not that I was intentionally trying to add some jokes in before the real heavy emotional moments, but I think it kind of naturally happened in the process of writing this. And I think it also happened in the real life experiences. Like, I don't know if any of you have had this experience, but I would have these really perverse moments where something really dramatic and terrible would be happening with my mom, and I would giggle a little bit. And it's a horrifying experience because you're like, how is this what's coming out of my body? Like, there's nothing funny about this. And yet there's some way in which, like, an overcompensation of emotion, I think, brings out really unexpected physical responses. And so I thought about that, and I thought about kind of how in both the story of what the sideshow is and in who my mom is, they're both really heavy things, but both of them are sort of, I mean, the sideshow and who my mom was as a person are very maintained by senses of delight and magnificence in many ways, like doing your best, grandest, most beautiful, wondrous job. And so, and that comes with humor. So I think it sort of naturally became a balance between those things.
I have a question. Gorgeous writing. So what was the time frame? You had this initial idea. So from that point until you had this final draft, what was that time frame like for you?
Yeah, so my mom had her stroke in 2010. And so it was 2.5 years after that I learned about this last traveling sideshow. And I was living in Alabama at the time doing my master's, and learned that there was this one town in Florida where sideshow performers would go to retire, and they lived in the off season. And it was a town that had altered its legislation so that people could have all of their kind of all of their performing stuff there. So you're allowed to like throw knives at people in the front yard and have your tigers and elephants. It's also the only postal counter that was designed for little people, and it's just like the whole town is like mythical. You know, it doesn't sound sort of real. And so I just drove down there from Alabama and wanted to interview some sideshow performers. I had no idea that there was going to be a book at the end of this journey, but I fibbed a little bit when I got down there, and I like called this Showman's Association and said, like, I'm interested in talking to some people about the sideshow. I'm a writer, and they're like, oh, okay, you're a journalist, you're a reporter, and it seemed like the right answer there was yes. So I said yes. Like, yeah, yeah. I'm not that. And so then she gave me like the phone numbers and home addresses of all of these performers, like, which was actually a terrifying thing to receive. But then I went ahead and called them and followed up. And so I met all these sideshow people, and ended up going down to Florida twice and writing a short article on them, and feeling like there was just so much more in their story. And so I think annoyed them enough, followed them around enough that they said, like, if you really want to understand what this is about, why don't you just come join us, come play with us for a season? And I said yes. And one of the reasons was, so my mom was in the hospital for a year. She got out of the hospital. She never regained her ability to walk or talk, but she was kind of medically stable enough. And instead of doing this really reasonable thing and like being safe and at home, my stepdad decided that they were going to take this long delayed trip to Italy, that they had always wanted to go to Italy. They'd never been able to. She didn't have a bone plate anymore, so they were going to have to take trains across the country from California to New York and then get on a boat and go to Italy. And they were like, screw it, we're going to do that. It doesn't matter if we come back. We're just going to go out big. So that was en route to happening when I learned about the sideshow. So that's how the timing, so this book really recounts those two journeys, them being out on this kind of insane last sort of, it felt like a suicide mission kind of trip to Italy, and then I was in the sideshow at the same time that was happening. So that was 2013, so your question was about the timeline. That was 2013. I finished the season at the end of 2013, so I started writing the book in 2014. And it took about 2.5 years to write the book. And then, editing and long delays in publishing, and here we are in 2018. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
I was curious about hearing more about your Writers in Schools program.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. It's a program that right now it's, let's see, it's taking writers in the community in Salt Lake City. So I think right now the majority of people who are doing that are University of Utah students, a lot of grad students in the English department, but it's totally open to any writers. And you partner with a teacher in Salt Lake City, and we've been doing it in Title I schools mostly, so schools and a lot of schools in West Valley and schools where there isn't as much funding for arts curriculum regularly. It's kind of the idea. And the writer will go, we'll figure out what the schedule works best with the teacher, and we'll go usually about once a week for one classroom period and do a creative writing lesson with the students. And that's like sort of instead of their regular English class, it's doing a creative writing lesson. And the reason is a lot of kids kind of develop kind of an adversarial relationship with English and writing, right? You think that writing has to do with like not being good at grammar or being insecure about, you know, not understanding the formation of an essay or something like that. So the idea behind this program, which is a national program, and I started the Salt Lake City one, but it's a national program that already existed. It's making writing feel like what it actually is, which is storytelling, which is communication, like which is the way that we, you know, can sort of tell our own stories and express ourselves to other people and be citizens of our country, of our states, whatever, and making it seem, not making it seem, but making it be fun and exciting, and also using a lot of different kinds of prompts that will make sense to different kinds of learners and partners and art and all kinds of stuff. So it's a wonderful program, and if anyone is interested in getting involved, I know it still goes on. They also have, there's a class that a student, it's an undergraduate class where the undergraduate students then also go into a classroom, and those students partner up with the younger students too. So it's been super great and fun and successful, and there's lots of resources online if you're interested in starting one up here.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Anything else? Great, thank you. Oh, yes.
Sorry.
No.
So I have a question about kind of how you hone into your memories. I just noticed that you are able to quote dialogue and things like that, and I was just wondering, how do you do that as a writer? How do you access those details and memories that make them so fruitful?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a really central question of writing nonfiction, especially writing about other people and yourself, really. But a couple of ways, and one is I think that for any person who's writing nonfiction, you have to come up with your own ethical guidelines for what you're going to figure out to be true, and everyone has to everyone has their own sort of particular guidelines. For the way that I did it, I took copious notes while I was out on the road with the sideshow. So every night I wrote a ton of notes down. I wrote notes on my phone while we were backstage between things. For when I was recalling like earlier childhood memories and stuff, it's so much trickier. And so that was sort of just trying to remember. I consulted with my brother and my stepdad and other people that were there to try to corroborate stories. But I also, one of the sort of writerly moves there is that there are necessarily going to be things that you run into that you don't have access to. Like for example, this imagined moment of my mom surfing or performing as a stunt surfer. And so the way you can still write about those things as a nonfiction writer, as long as you make it clear to your reader that you are using invention. You are gathering the best facts that you know and using your speculative powers to imagine what happens next. So I think that's one of the really exciting things about nonfiction, that you can use whatever research and facts and experience you find, and then you can also still kind of use the same imaginative tools that you use in fiction, but you just have to be, for me, the ethics that I chose were to always be pretty clear to my reader about when I am imagining or inventing something. That said, there's a ton of great writing exercises you can use to try to cultivate or try to remember some of your memories and try to use different kinds of brain recall things to get back in time. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that absolutely does. Thank you.
Great, sure, yeah. Okay, thank you
No,
so much.
don't go
I'm sorry,
yet.
no, I'm still here.
So,
Yeah.
so you talk about writerly ethics, and I'm
Yeah.
really interested in that, but how did you become a writer? Whatever made you start thinking in that vein?
I can't ever remember thinking of myself not as a person who wrote. I don't know that I would have called myself a writer for a long time, but I always wrote. I always wrote poems and stories and plays, and it was just always something that I did. I didn't start thinking about the ethics of it until I started writing personal nonfiction. So nonfiction that, you know, that dealt with, actually I guess any nonfiction where you're sort of saying this thing is true and I'm claiming it to be true. And so the way that I started thinking about the ethics, I guess, were to read a lot of other people, a lot of other smart writers who were thinking about these same questions. So reading some craft books and listening to some other writers say, like, you know, these are my ethical boundaries. Like for example, some nonfiction writers think, especially for memoir and personal nonfiction, that whatever your experience of a thing is true enough because it's from your point of view. So that's kind of like one approach to writing nonfiction or to writing memoir. And that's sort of at the far end of like no fact checking or corroboration. Or then there's like the James Frey Million Little Pieces, which is just like I'll just invent the most dramatic things that I can. But that's a whole other story. Then there are people who, you know, go all the way to, like I had a section of this is coming out in a very, a news organization that fact-checked, I mean, this book was fact-checked by my publisher, but the section that's coming out was fact-checked so carefully that, like, they called every person that I mentioned and were like, did you say this exactly? No, it was these other 2 words that you said. Great, we're fixing it. Like, it was so amazing. And so there's a really big range, of course, in the kinds of ethical kind of considerations. So I came to, I think, the way that I'm thinking about it right now with what felt like the way that I would want to be treated in nonfiction, I think, and the way that felt comfortable to me to think about people that I cared about being written about, which also extended to people that I didn't care as much about. And that was the harder part in the beginning, I think. Like, there was a person in the sideshow who I didn't get along with very well, and when I first started writing this book, I was like, oh yeah, all the, you know, the worst things, then she said this, then she did that. And as I wrote further into that, I started thinking, like, the kind of people that we like to read about, right, the kind of people that are real, are rounded people. We don't want to read about someone who is wholly good or wholly bad, right? We don't want to read a book about a wonderful person who does wonderful things in their lives and always succeeds. They're beautiful, they're smart, and they did a great job. Like, what a terrible book. I would never want to read that book, right? So we want to read about people who have flaws, who make mistakes, and who figure out how to sort of get better with them. So as I was writing all these terrible things about this person, I started thinking, like, okay, I have to figure out how to, you know, portray her as the rounded human being that she is. And so I had to think about, like, what do I know about her that are, you know, some of the positive things, and what do I know about her that contributed maybe to some of these behaviors that I found really questionable, and what is my personal responsibility in the way that I see her? What is my culpability, right? And in doing that, I ended up becoming a much more compassionate person. I think it made me have to re-examine sort of quick calculations I had made about people, and so that was a really big gift, I think, to come out of writing this, and made me so much less mad, really. And also, like, same thing happened. I had all these stories I had believed about my mom, all these, like, wrongs she had done to me when I was young, and coming at them as an adult and thinking about them further and re-examining them and thinking about, like, what were actually the circumstances of her life when these things were happening. It just sort of, like, got rid of a lot of anger or bad feelings. So, yeah, it was a powerful experience.
And so your mom couldn't ever regain enough to be able to tell you what she felt about the book, or if she even was able to read it?
No, she wasn't. She actually died the day after I sold it. So yeah, it was a quick passing of events. But she knew that I wrote it. Yeah, she never regained her ability to read, but she knew that I did it.
And what about the performers? What did they say? Yeah,
they have been really kind and receptive. I sent them all early copies of the book to just say, like, just so you know, this is what I'm saying, it's coming out. And they've been really great. I think that they are, like any press is good press. for the sideshow. There's, I think anytime they can sort of be in something, they're happy to be there. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
So in your author's note, you say, if you want some juicy stories that were left out, send me a postcard and
Yeah.
I'll see what I can do.
Yeah.
So could we like have a collective postcard to you now
Yeah.
for a juicy story?
Oh gosh,
Yes,
that's
please.
great. Yeah. Let me think of one. A lot of the ones that were taken out were because they are not like PG-13. My publisher was like, I don't know if you should.
We're uncensored.
Great. Okay. Great.
This will go out on YouTube, but you can black out
We'll
this
just
part.
bleep for the next couple minutes. Let me think.
I can let you off the hook. I just figured you had a go-to one because you have a note.
I
in your
know.
book that
Well, the
seems to
thing
be
is, so
asking for them.
the postcards I've gotten so far, I keep choosing a new section that was cut out and mailing it back. So usually I get to like look through my manuscript, and now my brain is rattled for many reasons, and so I can't come up with that. I'll say this one thing really quickly, and that was I present physically as a very kind of boring, normal, like regular, like quote unquote normal person. And I'm using the language that people in the sideshow use, right? They use like norms and non-norms. I present as very normal. The rest of the sideshow performers do not present as normal. And a lot of them do it intentionally. They want to look like they are part of a different tribe, right? There's a lot of tons of tattoos and piercings and hair colors and crazy clothing, and just in all ways they present really differently. And so as someone who has always tried to blend in as much as possible to the people around me, to just look like a blade of grass in a meadow, I was really not used to people like looking at us a lot when we walked around, but people look at us a lot when we walk around. And I should say the only time that we actually would walk around would be in the middle of the night at Walmart. And that's because we performed all day from usually about 9 a.m. till about midnight or 2 a.m. straight through our show over and over, which is the hours that the carnival is over. So to buy like food and to basically survive, we would go after the fairgrounds closed to Walmart, because that's the only thing that's open 24 hours and it's across America. And so we would go there, and that's where basically, like, if you ever want to meet a ton of carnies, go to Walmart when the carnival's in town between about midnight and 3 a.m. It gets crazy. Showdowns in the aisles. Yeah, so maybe this is the thing I'll say. So there's a big rivalry in the carnival between the carnies that work the rides and the carnies that work the games. And the rivalry is this: the game carnies make so much more money, right? They just rack in the money. So they have this really intensive superiority complex because they're just like covered in money. The ride carnies, however, have like the coolness quotient because they're working the rides that all of the mostly like, young teenagers want to come do. So the carny dudes especially would be like, oh, pretty girls, come up to the front of this long line and I'll get you on this ride really quickly. So they felt greatly superior because they have the ability to manipulate the people and their desires. So this rivalry would square off in actual fights sometimes. And so one time when we were in Walmart, someone was like, don't go to the soups aisle right now. Huge fight going down, and indeed there was like crashing cans, and there was a big fight that broke down. So that was a wild time. And then this is the same night that we went outside. So when I started out talking about presenting as very normal, as very norm, we went outside, and this pickup truck full of local guys drove like floored it right toward me and all the other sideshow performers I was standing with, just like flooring it like they were going to run us over. And then peeled out right in front of us, threw their drinks at us, and yelled like a bunch of inappropriate things. And I was like, what? Oh my God, why did they do that? Why would they do that? And I was freaking out. And all the other performers I was with were like, ugh. Like boring, but like, all right, who cares, whatever. And that was a shocking moment to me to think like, I have always presented as normal, so I've never had to deal with something like that. And they've always presented as being different, and so they have dealt with that so many times that it was totally insubstantial. And that was a big moment of learning for me. Yes.
So you're presently in schooling now, and I wondered if you could just share your educational background.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm currently in the PhD program at the University of Utah in creative writing. I'm on a temporary leave while I have I'm very lucky to have a really long book tour going on with this, so I'm on leave right now. But and before that, I did an MFA, a Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing at the University of Alabama. And I did the sideshow between the Alabama-Utah lives, not when I was like a young person who didn't know better, but I did know better. I turned 30 in the sideshow, but I still did it. And before that, I did my undergrad at UC Santa Barbara in California, and have lived a lot of other places in between, and yeah, moved around. Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah.
And then I have kind of a two-pronged question. When you joined the
It's a tongue twister, yeah.
Did you go into it with the intention, with the knowledge that you wanted to create a book when you were done? And also, how, it sounds like you were going, like 18 hours of the day. How did you juggle writing with performing in this slideshow?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I I hoped that there would be a writing project, that there would be a book out of it. When I first, as I mentioned, when I first was going down there and interviewing them a little bit, I knew that I was doing that to write like an article, like a sort of magazine length piece on some of the performers. But as soon as I started talking to them, it was like each story put me in a room with 100 doors, and then I would choose one to go down, ask more questions, and then there would be 100 more. So it felt like the life of these folks and their stories were so big and so interesting and complex. So I really hoped that there would be a book. I mean, I think starting something like this, you don't know for sure what will happen, and it felt like the adventure of it would be enough to kind of keep it going for a while. But yeah. And then with timing, I didn't have any time to write, to actually like compose the book. So I just took quick notes, just tons of notes as fast as I could. And I started, in the beginning, for the first maybe month, I took really careful, precise notes. And then I started doing something that a person should never do. And that is, I became habituated to life out there with the sideshow. Things that at first seemed totally crazy to me started seeming really normal. Like we lived in the back of a semi truck in a box and in a trailer, and we all lived back there without rooms. And we would be next to like whatever was parked next to us in the carnival is what we would live next to. So sometimes we would be parked often next to like some sort of a petting zoo. And so, then suddenly you would like walk down the stairs of the trailer and there would be like 3 piglets that had gotten loose that were just like running circles around your feet. And so in the beginning I did a really good job of writing all that down. And then after a while, when I went back to read my notes to compose the book, I would see things like, remember that thing about the clowns? And that would be my note to myself that I'm looking at years later, like, what thing about the clowns? I have no idea. So I became occasionally a lazy note taker, and that's the cardinal sin of nonfiction writing. You've got to always write it all down. But yeah, quick notes. Yeah.
We have time for maybe one more question, then we'll move into open mic. Do we have a final question? Anyone?
Yes.
Are you going to demonstrate fire swallowing for us tonight?
I would love to. I am under strict orders from all libraries and bookstores to not bring any fire-eating materials inside. Otherwise, I wish I could. Yeah. Thank you all so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Tessa. That was just wonderful to hear all of that stuff. Okay, so we'll move into open mic. We have 7 readers tonight. Remember that we can't exceed the 7-minute reading time. We want to make sure that everybody has a chance. And our first 3 readers tonight will be Brittany Allen, Jessica Nani, and Lexi Reese.
All right, I brought a couple poems with me tonight that I have neither titled nor know how to introduce. So I'm just gonna go.
Okay.
My sister is my brother now. Mother bought him a girdle to hold her budding puberty at bay. She doesn't want breasts. My sister, who is now my brother, 14 years in. I shouldn't call it a phase. When I was 14, I also hid my swelling body beneath X-large hoodies, boot-cut jeans, glasses askance, and teeth too wide for my own face. Last night I dreamt his father followed me into the shower. Maybe my brother's disguise will actually keep him safe. And my second one. My brother, who was born my sister, brings Rosie to our sleepover. Rosie the stuffed rabbit. Rosie, who we built together when my brother was still Raquel. The summer she was 8, we stopped at a strip mall on our way to Salt Lake City. Raquel picked Rosie's damp hide, limp pelt on a hook, and I helped fill Rosie with white life as Raquel kissed her wishes into a velvet heart we slipped inside. We even gave her a voice box with the static sound of her parents' love before running thick thread up her backside. My brother, who was born my sister, brings Rosie to our sleepover. Rosie the stuffed rabbit. Rosie, who is now mottled with age and love and drool. There is a hole now in her side, arterial threads dangling. My brother sticks 2 fingers in, pulls out a flashlight, a Sharpie, a knife. Thank you.
It's been a very long time since I've done this. I'm happy to be back.
Yay, Jess.
So I have 3 poems for you. 2 are old, 1 is new. The first one, for introduction, my senior year of high school, my mom got incredibly ill to the point that we thought she was going to die. And this first poem is from her perspective. It's titled Room 304, University of Utah Hospital. Come, this season stretches out far past what I, with oyster skin and cavern eyes, will manage. Enter, spread your crippling goodbyes across these industrial floors. Ladle out your sentiments, soup, that by and by pastel scrubs will come and scrape from my most volatile crevice. But gather here, bestow your prayers upon my soiled scalp. It is okay to cringe, creep home later and wash me off, scrub my death scent from your palms. If I could wash myself from these wasted graying palms, would I? Leave me now, let me unsheathe myself, drop this coarse smile and grant my eyelids leave to tear into the rivers they've been damming. God, if you are there, let them know that they are loved. The second one is a revision from a poem that I have read here before. It's called 8-Legged Resolution. My heart is a spider web. It burst forth from the ass of an 8-legged beast, used for entanglement, a home for disease-ridden flies, actionless net. I could be one of those flies, dead skin wings and raisin body. I'd smile pretty at the spider, antenna fluttering, and offer a leg in remorse for my overeagerness. In other news, I'm going to make myself a necklace of legs for the new year. Watch me play spider. And this last one is a lot happier. It's titled B. Like butter sunshine, you flit, fitfully across my cheeks, warm breath like late August sun flittering through leaves, too weak to hold your heat at bay. Darling man, you taste like new school pencils, your lips ripe with beginning, fresh and sweet as fall apples when they finally find mine. Sweet human, you are like every A I've ever been given. I probably don't deserve you, but good God, I'll run with you and smile the whole way home, reckless and proud either way. Enchanting when you have me, as surely as the leaves will turn orange and golden hues, readying for the autumn drop. Like the crimson leaf, I've slipped, tumbled from my perch, among the precarious branches and into your hands. Slide me into your favorite book, press me there gently but firm, and I'll stay, vibrant in your tender care. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lexi, and I'm going to read my poem, Blue Irises. It's about someone I used to know. Brows sweeping like rainbows, he says, I'm not sure why they put me here. but I think I must have gone a bit funny. I brush his hand, careful not to rip his linen skin, and ask, "Would you like to go for a walk?" His eyes squint, the divots in the skin around them fold like the compressed edges of a fan. "Yes, I think I'd like that," he smiles. "It gets lonely here without Beth." His mind is a vineyard, once expertly cultivated with dewy red grapes, know nothing except rotting husks. He rubs his forehead, trying to smooth out tendrils of memories. Tattered vines with missing connections. They knot in his frontal lobe and bunch in his neocortex. He's tossing, spinning, falling into forgetting. Neurons fragmenting and the CSF fluid bathing his brain. His hippocampus is overgrown with figments of false memories, spreading like weeds, warping his perceptions, until he forgets things that are and remembers things that aren't. I help him stand and we make our way outside Sunshine Terrace. His blue irises peek through gray lashes. "You know," he says as we walk, "I was a doctor. I helped build this place." He burrows his brain's vegetation to retrieve memories like tidings from the goddess Iris. "I met Beth in medical school. Beth was going to be a nurse, and I saw her, and I pointed to her, and I said, she's the one I'm gonna marry. Me and Beth, we had quite a life." He examines the blue irises wreathing the building. Petals fan around their yellow-laced hearts. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" A soft breeze curls around my fingers. "Yeah," I say, "it is." Those were wonderful, all three of you. Russ, you wanna? Okay. All right. I want to say too that those first three readers have all been involved in Sink Hollow, which is our undergrad literary magazine, and Jess is our editor, and that's awesome. And Brittany's a grad student now, but used to be on staff poetry, and Lexi is on my poetry staff, so you guys are awesome. All right, our next three readers tonight will be Haley Reese, Tyler Esplin, and Nicole King.
Hello, I only have 2 poems and they're both untitled. Do you ever feel like you're living a lie? Is it the way the others see you, or because you want to die? And was it like that because of your choice? Did you really meet an angel or hear the ghost's voice? Do you ever feel like it will never end, knowing that your friends are different, but you won't change again? And does it bother you when they talk about it like it's the flu, and you're laughing in the corner because you wish it were you? What am I supposed to do if you can't be mine? The moment's clean, and what I mean is, there's no such thing as time. Say something, anything. Let me know I was something to you. If I wasn't even a nuisance, tell me, what do I do? And here's the second one. I can't play piano like I've always wanted. I can't dance or want it. I can't play the part. One day when I'm laughing, will I still feel the distance from everyone else's smiles to mine? And when you're all out there in a world all by yourselves, will your strings still be connected to mine? I wonder if it's true what they say about scars. Will wounds really get smaller in time? Once when I was younger, I had a dream, I think. I wonder what it was, but I'm tired of wondering. I know what you'd say if you saw all my useless dreaming, but how am I supposed to say, I want to live, with no real truth or meaning? I had a dream I couldn't see you, treated as a formality, but now times have changed, the feeling is strange. Do you think that dream has become reality? I can't be what you wanted, and you can't be mine. And if things don't turn out the way that I wanted, then why should I waste my time? I can't even write like I used to. All I can do is pretend. What do you think about you and me? Do you believe it's the end? I'm not very good at living a life. My efforts are always so late. I have grown up, and in doing so, I've become someone I hate. Whatever road I went down as myself have caused us this much harm. It's sad how we can never have what we want, but maybe that's part of our charm. Knowing that I'm going to live as a husk of what I am now, do you get lost when you get into life and think what, why, when, where, and how? If I could just smile and let it all go, but it's hard when nobody knows. That makes me sound cliche, I suppose. Take all my son, and the memories of when we were young, and go, like I was never anything, and you know that you've won. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. It's been a while.
Yeah.
All right, I just have one poem I want to share tonight. It's called Laura Number 4. I guess the wind swept oceans wept, never expecting our plastic havoc to boil to a head. You've got this endless incandescence blessing every evangelical essence, clever and obsessive and screaming death indefinitely. This is insomniac nonsense, spending every precious second spouting bullshit, godless prophecy, expecting my poetic intention to bend hell alchemical metal, a fence to protect the devil's lectern. But instead it leaves screaming, teeth to the wheels, measuring the echoing moments, hexing every attempt at investigation at perplexing entropy of non sequitur sentences. Spiraling tangentially into abrupt endings, the alphabet is spelled incorrectly in oblong consonants and shouting down the vowels. Solemn, dreadful, impeccable, awful, toxic oddity, an impossible colossus cowering in the shadows of the tower that optimists built. Words are purposeless, the virgin birth observed by her most courteous servant, and Laura, I've lost it. I'm plodding off topic and skirting the issues, blue delusional disillusionment. The true confusion continues blooming in the refuse, doomed to conclude in obtuse obscurity. I'd prefer a certain urgent curse of absurdity, subverting perverse symmetry, pensive, defenseless empathy. The clocks are tick-tockless. Haunted by the god-awful, caterwauling apologies, emptying prosaic into blameless, vacant spaces, I can talk my way around anything. Turning perfect, verseless circles to escape painful conversations. You know I'm unstable, chaotic gospel apology. Imperfect and spineless and frightened. A cloud of sad, anxious, imaginary tragedy that somehow landed on its feet. I evoke every ghost I know to provide silent asylum while I try to find my way home. Rebecca weaves her nimble fingers abreast every delicate thread in one smooth, lucid movement, so intimate she quivers in Shakespearean sadness. In a collapsible, ink-splattered cavern where we hold up high, psychic, soulful, a private, silent fire that lights the path forward to the strange, barbarian terrain beyond the doorway. Laura, I was blindsided and left to die, high and Christ-like and drunk until sunrise. The books are unwritten, the songs all senseless dissonance, this schematic masterpiece unraveled in the hands of some trap carpenter who couldn't interpret insightful divine measurements into some phony stone bullshit. So now the castle is crooked and the thieves roam freely, speaking gibberish masterpieces, laughing manic at the nothingness. Thank you.
I just have one poem and it's kind of short. Just as some context, they recently built a new sculpture out by the library on campus. It's made of like willows woven together. It looks really cool. I call this poem Sculpture. Gossamer strands like daytime moonlight drift between woven window panes in rooms like stanzas of poetry. Light like stars glimmer through cracks of the bent willow walls, glimpses of magical worlds apart from here. Warm, woody smell, just close your eyes and breathe. Feel the smoothness of the branches, touch the dryness of the leaves. But this cannot last. It will not last. What kind of art is built to die? What story does it tell? Art and life inspire each other. If life must die, so must art.
We have so much talent in this community. It's just awesome. So thanks so much for being here and reading for us tonight. Our final two readers will be Ron Jensen and Russ Wynn.
Hi.
Hi, Ron.
Parker and Odell. My nephew Parker, my brother Odell, both had bad accidents, but they didn't fare out. In each case, it could have been worse. Each could have gone, not going a little further. I guess it wasn't the time then to go yet. So because of that, you don't need a fat. You can just be happy. You know, they're still there. So we don't have reason to fan them. But we'll call it the year forecast. What will the new year forecast be? From when it starts to when it ends in the spring? Will it be happy? Or will it be sad? Will it be good? Or will it be bad? The kids have fun. And they come every day to do their work and go and play. So I love the kids. And I hope the year will be happy for them. But they are here. Thank you.
I have three. I really like the poem Degrees of Grey in Philipsburg, Richard Hugo. It's from the 80s. And so I tried it, and it was into the deep end really quickly. So this is a poem about my hometown, Preston, which is pretty much all I write about right now. It's called Hiraeth. Hiraeth is a Welsh word that means sort of homesickness, but it doesn't translate really well. It's like homesickness for a specific time and place that you can't really find again. So it's called Hiraeth for Preston. You live in a town that's been small since 1863, and God keeps it safe, does things for a reason. Even though the mill burned down and somebody's kid got mouth sores from the meth that seeped into the bones of the houses, you still take the sacrament every Sunday. Still sing Beautiful Zion, built from above, from an old hymn book. After the Indian massacre, your ancestors settled on the muddy, drawn by Providence, built homes with wagon boxes, hauled logs with running gears, named it all Worm Creek. It wasn't a good name, so they picked a new mayor and tried again. Cut furrows in the earth, harvested trees in the Lord's name, ran a railroad for his son Jesus Christ, and built a wheelhouse for the Holy Ghost. Preston grew, replaced cottonwood and sage with thistle, puncture vines, skeleton weed drawn ragged across the desert, while your grandmother shaded her eyes from a porch stoop, watched children skitter across fields, and the men bucked hay just like you do 130 years later, piling stacks to the heavens. Now, you carry a sprinkler pipe across clay flats every evening, struggle over God's command that you spend 2 years in a far land on a mission. And you think, why not? Because after high school, most people just graduate and leave before the farms dry up. But you just stand looking out across the ruts in the field, wondering if they'll remember you for who you are, not what you believe. I used to hunt when I was young, and I haven't hunted for a long time. I don't really miss it, but I wrote a poem about a time when I found an old deer carcass with my dog, so that's what this is. Kind of weird. It's called The Search in the Hollow. Long mass of teasel and cattails, rusted olives fume black summer flies, dull background winged drone wafting through willow finger bones, hanging in the air with the slide of reeds in the breeze. Something near is dead, and the dog knows where he must go. Sniffs air dark with rot, squints at sun deep in sky, setting behind old oaks, his paws carving the waterline. We find the carcass, and it all becomes real. Mouth without symmetry, yawning at its own past, once a deer now rubbed, smeared into the landscape in tufts of hair and scribbles of horseflies. Now the delicate hum of cars off the highway beyond. Applause, flight of bird flock overhead, jumped by the dog as if to congratulate you on your find. But he's already gone after something else in the weeds, tracking, encircling. I had dinner with Mitch. And for some reason, dinner with Mitch means Russ recounts all of the crimes he committed in high school. So this poem probably needs to be read tonight. It's about all the illegal fireworks that we made when we were in high school. Thank you, Mitch. This is dedicated to you. It's called Independence Days. After school, 5th grade, we left sugar snakes in the road, carbon ash entrails, sodium and sugar growing red right out of the concrete. We dodged Roman candle bursts, wiped the sparks from our shirts, and watched cars roll by between lightings on the highway. Later, we were juniors who skipped Mr. Clinky's econ class, wrapped black cats around paper tanks, and blew them to colorful popping hell. We threw bloom flowers at each other, then spelled the word dick with glowing punks as the sun settled deeper on the walk home. Freshman year, the state outlawed bottle rockets, but we still waged war across the neighbor's lawn after work, fired multi-shot aerials over his garage, and put out the smoke smolder on the haystack with stolen beer in the dark, crouching away from headlights. Later we got really bored, pulled apart Liberty Torch fountains and Whistling Pete's and made bombs. You want the flash powder over the nitrate. The black stuff burns slow, but the stuff with lots of metal salts packed into aluminum tubes makes a big enough burst to chip concrete. People started leaving for college, shaking their heads at the pool table stained with dextrin and gunpowder, and the last time we lit up, we just threw what was left in a 7-Eleven cup. We topped it off with gas and watched it burn the wheat patch near the road, comets and dahlias shooting off in a huff, the scorch too hot, the flames burning rainbow all the way down to the house foundation, curling back like a grin. Thank you.
Let's have one more round of applause for all our readers. Thanks everyone. Books for sale in the back. Thanks again, Michael, for coming to our event tonight. And leave your surveys on the back table, please. And Tessa will sign books if you'd like to buy a book. So thanks everyone.